I'm Jim Check. You're watching Kelowna Now. I'm here with Kevin Falcon, the leader of the opposition party, the BC United. And we're here to talk about the recent Canfor announcement. I think that was on Friday, of them announcing they're going to close the Bear Lake Mill. They're going to suspend the Houston expansion and curtail a shift in PG, affecting about 600 people, I think, right?
Yeah, actually about 700 jobs, but it has an effect that goes well beyond that. Yeah, because it affects all the families of those, in many cases, primary bread earners, and it also has a massive negative impact on these communities. It's really devastating.
Yeah, a lot of these people buy houses in those communities and all that kind of stuff, and that house has little to no value when that industry pulls out, right? Like, so, I mean, we've seen many BC communities devastated by loss of the big industry in town, and the forestry sector seems to be hitting harder and harder. And then the big thing on this that I noticed was, and I worked for Canfor for 10 years when I was a young guy. The NDP saying it's because the Canfor doesn't want to ride out commodity cycles. Canfor saying because it can't get any wood. So
Yeah.
which is it, right?
Well, I would trust Canfor in this one. It's not just that they can't get access to timber. That's obviously a huge part of it, but it's also just the regulatory chaos that has taken place under this government, the permit paralysis, where they just can't issue permits, even for burnt wood, that in Alberta, they managed to get permits out within 3 weeks. And in
Yeah.
BC, it's over a year and they're still waiting to be able to access wood that's already been burnt. So they're trying to, there's a limited period of time in which you can salvage any value out of that wood. They can't even get that going. And so I think what's happened is the major companies, it's not just Canfor, but they're voting with their feet and they're all leaving British Columbia, unfortunately. And the impact on communities and jobs is devastating. For Houston, for example, this is their major employer. When you lose your major employer from a community, that's effectively a big chunk of your tax base. So, that covers, all your recreational facilities, that covers a huge part of your tax base. It's a very, very challenging issue.
Well, I mean, I come from that, including just in a little community I grew up in Midway and Greenwood, when they lost their mill, and then and then more recently they condemned their fire hall because they don't have the tax base to
That's right.
to generate funds to do things. And then 10,000 jobs. I was talking to Linda Cody from the BC Council Forest, and 10,000 jobs last year in the forest industry alone, 5,000 direct and 5,000 spin-off jobs. That's a
Mhm.
massive hit to, that's the BC's number 2 sector for employment, and good paying jobs too.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. They're all family supporting jobs. I think, I quite candidly, I'll tell you that what we've got here is a problem. We got a problem that we have a government that frankly doesn't support the natural resource sector, whether it's forestry, whether it's mining, whether it's LNG. And these are hugely important jobs and capital investment for communities right across the province, but particularly in rural BC. And we've got to get back to having a government that's got, that is not ashamed of our natural resources, but actually is thrilled that we are given this incredible opportunity that most jurisdictions, countries around the world would give anything to have the kind of natural resources that we've got. And we can harvest them sustainably. We can make sure that we'll have a forest industry as we have had for 150 years in British Columbia. Going forward, there does have to be changes in how the industry operates, for sure. I think even the industry accepts that. But my goodness, we've got to just restore hope. It's a renewable resource. Trees grow, and in fact, when they grow, it's actually better for the environment because they suck up more carbon dioxide and emissions, and so it's a really positive thing.
Yeah, and it's sad that Canfor is one of BC's top corporations, and it's employed a lot of families. And again, I've worked 10 years for Canfor, and to be at odds and not even have the same reason for why they're, you know what I mean? Like, they seem to be at odds as to why they're curtailing they just don't want to invest capital in BC. They just don't trust it by the sounds of it. And then the other thing that's super puzzling to me, if this current government, one of their primary focuses is climate change, wouldn't better forestry management and cutting more trees down to provide those natural fire breaks, wouldn't that be like the benefit of harvesting more? I mean, their cut blocks seem to be cutting back, and you would think that the more active the forest industry is, the better it is for wildfires.
Absolutely. In fact, we put out a specific platform piece on that last year because we were so concerned about not just the fires that we went through, but the fact that if we don't move quickly, we're going to be facing the same challenges this year. And unfortunately, I'm sorry to report, they've done almost nothing, none of the changes we call for, which is exactly what you're saying. There's a lot of work that we can get, especially smaller contractors doing, putting people to work, doing thinning, for example, opening up that tree canopy to allow that sunlight down to the forest floor, which is important for growing that green, stuff
Vegetation,
that's
yeah.
a lot hard. Yeah, the green vegetation is much harder to ignite, and you could hold a lighter to it, and it's not going to light on fire.
Yeah.
But when it's covered over like that, you get a buildup of that dry, very
Dead pine needles.
dead pine needles that one
Yeah.
lightning strike and boom, you've got a fire. So there's those opportunities. We've said that we need to have a full-time firefighting force in BC. So in the winter, we could rent it out to places like California, Australia, so that, they build up their skill levels and then bring them back in the winter when we need them. Make sure they've got the best technology. They've got the right water bombers. They've got all the, everything they need, night vision goggles, so that we can fight the forest fires, not just from 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, which is what the NDP do, but, actually 24 hours a day if necessary. At nighttime, it's actually better when it's cooler to be, attacking these flames. So there's just so much we could have done, so many lost opportunities that I think is unfortunate.
Yeah, I think common sense seems to be like lost sometimes, right? Because I've worked for Alberta Forestry, and I've worked for like the Canfor in the past, and it seems like it's wildfires are fuel, right? So if you lessen the fuel impact, then obviously you're going to lessen the wildfire impact. I did share a slide when I interviewed Linda Cody from, again, the BC Council for Forest Industries. And I know that the forests aren't exactly the same, but Finland has like a third of the forest that we do. Like we have tripled the amount of forest. But they have double the cut that we have. And in 5 of the last 10 years, they've had no loss in wildfires for the forests, right? And it's just puzzling. Like, why aren't we harvesting more?
Yeah, no, exactly. And as you say, we can be very strategic about where we harvest to include significant cut breaks between especially communities and, the forestry sector. So I think there's a lot of this stuff that can happen. What is clear is that we need engaged leadership. And by that, I mean, it can't just be, some low visibility NDP cabinet minister out there reading speaking points whenever there's a forest fire. It just has to be like really engaged, like getting on top of the problem, working with First Nations, working with contractors, with the forestry sector to say, look, okay, like we know this is going to happen next season. What can we do differently? And let's, divide up the responsibilities and accountabilities here, and let's get it done and just start getting going.
We're close to an election, and if you end up being the leader of British Columbia, what can British Columbians expect? What can the people of Houston and Bear Lake and like in the forest industry, what can they expect from you and your party?
They can expect certainty. This is the biggest complaint that I hear. The reason the forest industry and the other natural resource sectors are so uncertain about investing anything in BC is the goalposts keep moving under this NDP government. And I can tell you, I've spoken to a board member of Canfor that actually confirmed that the major reason they're not making this decision is because they just don't, frankly, have much trust in this government and the decisions that they make, because they'll just keep changing the goalposts right when you're in the middle of your investment. And so a lot of the investment's moving south and east, but it's not staying in BC. The only way we're going to get back investor confidence and get capital reinvesting in BC again is if we have a situation where capital knows when they make an investment and a decision in British Columbia that they're going to have a stable government that they can do business with. Just important to point out, Jim, the 3 largest projects in British Columbia right now are the twinning of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, the LNG pipeline in the facility in Kitimat, and the Site C Dam. All 3 were started by BC United governments, and all 3 were opposed by the current NDP government. And as all 3 of those projects are coming to an end, because they're all coming to an end this year, there's not a single major project following in the wake. And that should be a major concern for British Columbians. It certainly is for me. So when I become Premier, the message is going to be, I want people and I want capital coming back to BC. We love our natural resource sector. We think we do it ethically and responsibly, but we are going to make sure we put people back to work and get that revenue generated that we need to look after our aging population.
Well, again, the forest industry is lumber, which we need to build houses. and we got too much of it out there right now that's dry, and better forest management would lessen the impact of wildfire. So it seems like a common sense solution, right? Just to get, like get CANFOR back out working. I know that a lot of governments think that companies don't have a choice where they invest their capital, and they do have a choice, right? They can go to Alberta, they can go to the States, they can go overseas, they can go anywhere they want with that money, right? And those are big investments that companies like CANFOR makes. We'll leave it at that. And I do have a question for you. As we near an election, there's rumors out there that swirl and on the United Party and the Conservative Party of BC. And is there any updates on that, or is there any kind of like where there's going to be coming together or anything?
Yeah, well, I hear from people all the time that are concerned about vote splitting. The BC Conservative Party is a separate party. It's not connected to the federal party at all, but they benefit from having the same name. And so that creates a lot of voter confusion. And obviously that helps them, especially in the polls when Pierre Poilievre is really popular right now. I think what's really important, though, is that, we have to say to ourselves, is there common ground that we can reach with free enterprisers that have to recognize that the biggest concern we hear from British Columbians are that they don't want the NDP in government one day longer than absolutely necessary. And boy, I'll tell you, that message came through loud and clear when I was in Kelowna, for sure. So I have an obligation as a leader to put aside my own biases and concerns about some of their candidate quality, et cetera, and just say, okay, let's see if we can find common ground. And we're trying to do that. I don't negotiate those things publicly, but I have committed to all the folks that come and approach me, and it's a lot of people, that I will use best efforts to see if there's common ground that can be found, so that we can make sure we focus on doing what's in the best interests of not our respective political parties, quite frankly, but the public of British Columbia. And I will continue to focus on that.
I think the families of northern BC appreciate that. I'm sure the families that are now have that terrible news they have to deal with. I did see your press release come out today, I think it was, and saying that you need some support for those families, but I don't know what kind of support they can get. I mean, those are good paying jobs. That's the tough part of those jobs. They're good paying. I mean, I worked in the mine industry as well as a mine site controller. And I know those jobs build families, right? Those are the jobs that you buy, trucks, and you build houses, and you build a family with those jobs, right? They're good paying jobs, and they provide benefits for all Canadians. Like, the lumber, builds homes, right? And, in the mine sites, all that stuff goes into your iPhone and all that kind of stuff, and everything you do, right? So how do you replace those jobs if we have what it seems like 10,000 jobs? I mean, that's 10,000 jobs lost last year in the forest industry. Like, we should be growing jobs in the forest industry, not losing jobs.
Oh my God, yeah. Just yesterday I met with the chief of the Clé Tenay in Prince George, Chief Logan, and she's a wonderful leader. And she pointed out that, a lot of their members are employed in the lumber industry and the forestry sector. I mean, this is their jobs. That's what they have up there. And they're feeling really abandoned by government right now. And, just remember, behind those 700, that number 700 are real people that have mortgage payments, that have kids to, send to dance classes, and they've got all these obligations. And they're scared right now. They're scared because they've just lost their job. They don't know what the future holds for them. Can they still live in their communities? And this is where government does have a role to play. But my God, they've got to
committed
act
their lives to those jobs,
Yeah,
right? I mean, to them,
absolutely.
I used to be a joke when I worked at the mill. You're a lifer, right? And a lot of people did choose that because it was a good life, right? It was good
Absolutely.
paying jobs. And the other thing that I'd like to point out for northern communities, and even in the interior of BC, most of these communities spring up because of resources, right? I mean, these
Absolutely.
communities are born out of sawmills, they're born out of pulp mills and mines and all that kind of stuff, right? People don't decide that they're going to start a community in Bear Lake, right? The community
No,
starts because
exactly.
of the mill, right?
No, that's exactly right. And they're feeling abandoned right now. And we've got a very urban government. The NDP are totally an urban government. They frankly don't care much about what happens east of Hope. And that's unfortunate because, our province still generates two-thirds of the revenues that support us. Two-thirds of the wealth created in this province come from outside of Vancouver. And we can never forget that. We are a province rich in resources, but they do us no good when we have a government that ignores that opportunity. So we want to get back to creating that opportunity and getting people back to work.
Well, Kevin, I thank you for your time today. And hopefully we speak again. And hopefully there's some help on the way for those people in those northern communities. And hopefully CANFOR can find a way to move forward in some of their projects as well.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. I don't see that happening anytime soon, unfortunately, but we will certainly fight hard to make sure that at least government steps forward and provides some financial support right away to those workers
Yeah.
and help
And
bridge them to other options.
that point you raised, certainty, and I know that as a business person as well, certainty is key for investment, right? Like you need some type of certainty. We've seen that in many aspects. We're seeing some backlash here in this community too on people that invested their hard-earned dollars into Airbnbs and had that taken away from them as well by this NDP government. So
Absolutely.
there's, like, I
Absolutely.
mean, so they're saying, why would I invest in BC if they could, at the stroke of a pen, take something away, right? So
Yeah, no,
I
that's
mean,
a,
imagine those people in
yeah,
Houston right now feel just as abandoned, and in Bear Lake and that part too.
absolutely.
So,
Couldn't have said it better myself.
all right, thank you for your time.
All right. Thank
Uh,
you, Jim. Appreciate it.
you've been watching Kelowna Now.